Hey, I'm Capri. My background is education, 7 years in the classroom, a master's in teaching, an MBA, and I currently work in instructional design. I'm not a lash artist. I'm someone who builds curriculum and training systems. And when I started working with lash educators hands-on, I noticed the same instructional mistakes coming up over and over again. Not because they're bad teachers, but because they've never been trained on how to teach. So, if you're teaching lash mapping to beginners and you're wondering, how much do I actually need to teach them in one session? Today, I'm breaking down exactly what to cover and what to skip based on how learning actually works, not just what feels comprehensive. The first thing your students need to understand is the structure of the eye itself. Not medical anatomy, not every technical term, just the functional landmarks they need to reference when they're mapping. In instructional design, this is called building a shared vocabulary. If you don't establish these terms up front, every explanation after that point becomes harder. So, cover. Where's the inner corner? Where's the outer corner? Where is the highest point of the lash line? This gives them a shared language. When you say highest point, everyone in the room knows what you mean. You can cover this in 5 minutes with a diagram or a practice hit. Don't overthink it. Here's what you don't need to teach beginners: curl stacking, mixed curl sets, or advanced curl theory. They don't need to know when to use a C plus D combo or how to layer curls for texture. Not yet. Why? Because it's something called cognitive load theory. Basically, the human brain can only process so much new information at one time. If you pile on too many variables early, students will shut down. So, start them with one curl type, usually a C or a D, depending on your preference, and let them focus entirely on placement and symmetry. Once they can map a clean, symmetrical set with one curl, then you introduce curl variation, but not before. What you do need to teach is one complete style walk through step by step. I recommend starting with a natural or a classic set because the logic is straightforward and the results are immediately visible. Walk them through the decision-making process. Why does this length go here? Why does this placement create balance? What would happen if we shifted this by one latch? This is what separates competent instruction from memorization drills. The goal isn't for them to memorize where lashes go. The goal is for them to understand why lashes go there, so they can adjust when the eye changes. That's the difference between a student who can replicate one example and a student who can think critically and problem solve on their own. Beginners do not need to learn how to map hooded eyes, deep set eyes, protruding eyes, asymmetrical, downturned eyes, all in one class. That's a lot. They need to learn how to map one eye shape well. This is basic scaffolding theory in education. You start with the simple, controlled version. You build competence, then you introduce complexity. You start with a natural, symmetrical eye. Let them practice placement, symmetry, and that style logic on that baseline. Once they've gotten that down, you can introduce variations. But if you throw 6 different eye shapes at them in their first class, they'll leave not knowing how to approach any of them. The most important thing you can give beginners: immediate and constructive feedback. Not a critique at the end of class. Not a general, good job, keep practicing. real feedback in the moment while they're still thinking through the process. This is backed by decades of research in learning science. Immediate feedback is significantly more effective than delayed feedback because the learner is still actively engaged with the problem. And this is where having a rubric or a set of coaching cards become essential. You're not making up feedback on the spot. You're pulling from a consistent assessment framework. So your students know exactly what they're being evaluated on and what to improve. Without that structure, they'll leave thinking they did fine and then replicate the same mistakes in their next set. So here's a summary. You should cover eye anatomy, one full style breakdown, real-time feedback. Be sure to skip advanced curl combinations, every eye shape variation, and focus on depth over breadth. Your beginners don't need to know everything. They need to know one thing really well. If you want a full breakdown of what to teach at each skill level, built around instructional design principles, check out the Lash Map Teaching Toolkit. It's designed specifically to help educators structure their classes without overwhelming their students. Links in the description, and thank you for watching.